Hey everyone, it's Anthony from Pretty Printed here. In today's video, I'll be talking about a new library called Request HTML. And what Request HTML allows you to do is it allows you to scrape web pages pretty easily in Python. So before in Python, what you normally had to do, or one option for what you had to do, is you would have to use one library to send a request to get a certain HTML page. And then you would use a second library to actually go through that page and get the information out of it that you would want. So I would use something like requests to get the page itself, and then I would use Beautiful Soup to go through the page and get the information off the page. But with the Request HTML, you only need one library to use it, and the API makes it very easy to understand how to get different things off the page. So I'm going to demonstrate this library using my website, and you'll see how it works. So this is actually logged in, so it's going to look a little different. So this is what my website looks like when I'm not logged in. So if you're not logged into the site, this is what you'll see. And the reason why I logged out is because when I send a request here, it is going to get the version that is for people who are logged out, or who aren't logged in, I should say. So I'm going to install Request HTML. So request.html. I actually already have it installed, so I don't have to install it again. And I'm going to start up a Python REPL. And when I do this, you'll be able to see how I can get the information from my page. So now that I'm in the REPL, what I want to do is I want to import something from that library that I just installed. So from requests_HTML, I'm going to import something called HTML session. And I'm going to instantiate this, and I'll call this session. So HTML session. And now with this session object, I can perform a request to get my website. So I'm going to use the convention from Python requests. This library is actually created by the same guy who created requests. So that's why the documentation and the API style is going to feel familiar if you're familiar with requests. So I'm going to run session.get. Then I'm going to type in my website. So https and then prettyprinted.com. So I run that and nothing happens, which is good. So if I type R, I see the response is 200. So the first thing that's important when you are scraping a page are the links. So links are important because normally you would want to scrape multiple pages on a website. Well, I suppose it depends on your project, but navigating to further links on that same site is normally desirable. So you will want to know all the links on the page. So to do that, you would type R, which is my response, and then HTML, and then links. So this has all the links that I have on my page. It's a set, and you can see the external links. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and then you can see the internal links as well. So like the privacy page, the courses page, the coaching page, the sign-in page, and so on. And if I wanted to see the absolute links, so I didn't want to construct the links myself, I can type r.html, then absolute_links. And it gives me the same links, but they all have the absolute URL. So I can just take one of those directly and get the information from that page without having to construct my own URL, like using the base URL and then add in the relative URL. I don't have to do that if I don't want to. So now I can start looking for things on the page. So let's look for this. So this welcome to Pretty Printed. So if I use my web inspector, I see that there is a class called headline that represents this H2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for that. To search for that, I'm going to use find, and it's actually going to be a CSS selector. So if you're familiar with jQuery, then you're familiar with CSS selectors. So if I type in r.html.find, and then I type in the CSS selector. So in this case, it's .headline. You may not be able to see it in my developer tools, but that's just what I'm looking at. I see that there's a H2 tag and it has a class called headline. So .headline is the CSS selector for the headline class. And I'll just say first equals true. So this gives me the element back. So if I type enter, I see it returns the element h2 and then class headline. So if I assign this to a variable, let's call this headline equals our HTML find, and then headline first equals true. Then I'll just get the same thing if I do that. But now that I have this element, I can look at various things for it. Like if I want to see the text for this element, so the thing that is in between the h2 tags, if I type headline.text, it shows me welcome to Pretty Print It, which is exactly what I see right there. And if I wanted to see the HTML for this headline, the complete HTML, I can just type headline.html and it shows me exactly what is in the HTML itself. So I see the headline class and the h2 tag and the text for welcome to Pretty Print It. This doesn't have anything else on it. So if I wanted to see something a little more complicated, let's take a look at the subtitle. So I'll call this subtitle is r.html.find, and then the class is subtitle, and I use first is true again. So if you don't use first, it's going to return a list of everything. So let me not use first and type subtitle, and you see it's a list, and there's only one element in this list. So if I want to reference something, I'd have to use the notation with the brackets and then the index. And then I can type text. And then it says, I make video courses on web development. Check out the featured free courses below. And that is exactly the text that I have there. And of course, if I want to see the HTML, I would just type HTML. So just like I did with those two elements, I can do the same thing with anything else on the page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to a different page so we can see something a little more interesting in action, hopefully. So I'm going to go to one of my courses, the Flask Extensions course, and I'm just going to perform a request using that URL. So I'll just overwrite R and session get, and then I'll fill in the Flask Extensions course. And then R is 200 again. And now what I want to do is I want to see a list of, let's say, the videos in a certain section. So here I have the curriculum for the course, and you can see the titles of all the videos in that section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through those and display them. So I'm going to inspect this, and I see I have something called course section. So I'm going to look for course section. So r.html.find, and course section is part of the class. So I'm going to type course-section, and let's see what it returns. So it returns multiple course sections, and if I wanted to see everything, I would do that. But just to keep this simple, I'm not going to go through all the course sections. Instead, I'm only going to focus on the first section, which covers Flask WTF. So I'm going to run that again, but I'm going to use first equals true. So now it only returns one element for me. So I'll name this variable Flask WTF section. Let me use underscores. And then if I type that, you'll see that it gives me the same information. So within this, I can find again. So if I look at one of the lectures, I see that the class is item. So if I were to type Flask WTF section dot find, then this works in the exact same way as it does before, but you're starting with the element that you selected before. So I selected the section, so I'm starting from that and I'm working my way down. So if I search for item, then I see it returns quite a few things, and it actually looks pretty here, like the diagonals. That's just a coincidence, though. So what I want to do is I basically want to print out something from those items. So I'll just call this items. Well, let me go up. Call this items equals that, and items is the exact same thing that I just selected. So now this represents each one of these little items in that course section. So intro to Flask, WTF, install and setup, creating a form, and so on. So if I look at just one of those, the first one, it gives me another element. And if I look at the text for that element, it gives me what's there. So I see there's a start, there's a new line, and it's the intro to Flask and the time. So if I wanted to print out all of those, I can do something like for item in items, and then print item.text. And now what happens is it displays all of the text for each one of those items. So start, intro to Flask, WTF, start again. And the reason why it says start is just because of the way the page is designed with this start button over here. But you see that the names of the individual lectures are appearing here. Now, of course, if I wanted to, I can just get rid of that start. Like I can cut out anything that has start in a new line, and I can only focus on the name of the lecture and the time in parentheses. But it just depends on what you're doing. But as you can see, by using this library, it is very easy to get this information. Like I barely did anything, and I'm able to get all the list of lectures I have in this particular section. So if you were scraping a more complicated page with some data that you were interested in, maybe some data that is updated over time, then as long as you know the selectors for it, and you can just use the developer tools in your browser. And I don't know if other browsers have this, but with Chrome, it allows you to get the selector. So if you go to copy and then copy selector, it will actually give you the selector for the element that you highlighted. So let me just type it here. Block-3827410 is the selector for the one I had selected before. So just using that library, request HTML, will get you a long way when it comes to scraping web pages. And I feel like making a project where I actually scrape something from a website and get some useful data off of it. So if any of you have any ideas on what website I can scrape and a kind of a project that I can build around it, just let me know and I'll consider making a video for that. So that's all I want to show you in this video, this new library, request HTML. It's pretty cool. If you have to scrape any website, I suggest you give this a try if you're using Python. So if you have any questions about this library, you can leave a comment down below and I'll answer it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you have subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.